I still wanted to have the guitar as the main force in the band.
Hi, I'm Vlad Bresnix, and welcome back to the BresnixCast, episode number 81, and this time I was joined by Zorn from the excellent Swedish symphonic metal band Zornheym. We had a really interesting conversation. We talked a lot about their album Where Hatred Dwells and Darkness Reigns, which I highly recommend, and as well, before we get started, we're going to listen to a song called The Opposed, and we talked about the video for this quite a bit because it's a very cool video. So if you don't want it spoiled for you, which I'll do during the show, I'll put the link in the show notes so you can go and watch it beforehand. So anyway, just before we get started, here is Zornheym with The Opposed. So I am here with Zorn from the Swedish symphonic metal band Zornheym. Zorn, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for inviting me to the show. It's an honor.
And absolutely, I've been really enjoying your music lately. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and how Zornheym got started?
Um, I'm 36 years old. I've been playing music for most of my life, and I actually started to get the idea to Zornheym in my early 20s. Um, I had this idea that I really wanted to do a concept album, but do it in a pretty, to me at least, unique and cool way where, everything revolves around this concept. And I mean, the king of concept album, King Diamond, of course, was like a huge influence for me. I mean, ever since I got my first King Diamond album, I've been, hooked about the idea to do like really complex albums. But I wanted like a concept that was stretching throughout the whole band catalog, basically, and the concept would like bleed out in everything, like stage wear and logos and basically the whole bunch. So I mean, I've been playing music and in various bands before that, and eventually in 2014 I started writing this the first album, and eventually I started to putting the band together when I had enough with songs that I could present to other people and be like, this is how the band is going to sound.
Yeah.
Do you want in on it, basically?
So, like, obviously, one of the things that stands out about your music is the sort of use of, like, sort of classical instrumentation. So, did you have a kind of classical background yourself?
No, I'm actually pretty self-taught in that area. It started with that I was composing a lot of like instrumental music back when I was younger. When you had like tracker programs like Fast Tracker 2 and more simple based programs. And then eventually I started doing some Swedish singer-songwriter music with a friend, and I got to know this incredible concertmeister Petter Möller, and he started, encouraging me to actually, it's going to sound so much better if you, step away from the programmed stuff and just use the real instruments. And so I wrote like a piece that he then recorded with his string orchestra for me, and I was like blown away about the difference that it actually did, when you had actual people playing your arrangements. And then he basically gave me some tips, like you should listen to this to learn the different instrument groups and stuff. And he started, you should think more that you have a bass section of the dual bass and the cello, and then have the violin and all of that stuff. So he gave me like a crash course, and then of course eventually I invited Skukka to join the band, and he has a master's in music. So nowadays it's basically me writing the composing the stems and stuff, and then I give it to him, and he goes through it and fix it, and eventually writes it down in notation and all that stuff. So he has all the knowledge about that. part to say.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting also, like, you basically started out, would you say, as like a composer then?
Yeah, I guess.
I suppose you still are in a way, but you know what I mean. Like,
I mean, I started actually when I was really young. I started as a singer, but I could not find the right technique, so I had like a constant sore throat, and then eventually my mind was more and more focused on the guitar, because eventually I started singing and playing the guitar, and then it was like I have like a constant sore throat, and there's like better people, better singers than me, so it's better to let them do that, and I'll just play the guitar and write songs. So I try actually and see myself more as a composer than a guitarist. It's like 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 Marty Friedman once said that first you need to define what you are, if you're a guitar player or a composer. But I mean, I think writing the music is what I get the biggest kick out of.
yeah, I can see that, and that's pretty cool. And you said as well, like at the time before Zornheym, you were like playing in sort of other bands. So what kind of music were you playing with those other bands?
Right before Zornheym, I played in a black metal band. Actually, Dark Funeral.
Oh, really?
From from Sweden. And
Yeah,
before that, I played like death thrash metal with a bunch of guys that used to be in Marduk, called Devian. We put out 2 albums through Central Media in
yeah, I've heard of Marduk as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're a really big band from actually close to where I grew up. I grew up in Finspång and Norrköping, where Marduk is from. Is like a 20 minutes car ride from. So I have had previous bands where we've recorded with the current bass player of Marduk, Devo. We recorded like a mini CD in his studio and Darker and stuff like that. So.
That's pretty cool. And it's sort of interesting that as well. It's funny that you mentioned, because we were kind of talking a bit before the show, and I'd sort of mentioned that I knew a guy who knew about like sound engineering, and he sort of like taught me how to do some stuff. And it's interesting how you sort of had the same thing, where you just had like somebody you knew who knew kind of more than you how to do something. And it's really great, that, isn't it, when like you just have someone who knows how to do something, they can give you like just a basic crash course on how to do something, and then like it makes such a huge difference to everything you do after that.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I sometimes I give guitar lessons and stuff like that, and I mean, I think it's really satisfying to even be the one that gives someone a crash course. Or I like to learn a lot of stuff like that. The only thing that I guess is not really my cup of tea. It's when it gets like too technical, when it's when you're too dependent on machines and stuff, and they're just messing with you, and it's like cables that are not working and stuff like that. But like composing and playing instruments and stuff like that, that's something that I really do enjoy.
Absolutely, me too. It's something like, yeah, that I always have, like, because I kind of started out when I was younger. It was an odd kind of way. I've mentioned this before in the show, but it's worth mentioning again. It was strange for me because my dad played in like a few well-known kind of folk music bands, and he
cool.
he was a bass player, and he taught himself how to play the guitar at a young age. So he got me a guitar when I was very young, and he would show me the basics, but he told me that I should really teach myself, because that's how he learned. But at the same time, him and my mum put me in piano lessons with a classical teacher, which was interesting. So I kind of had these two different ways of learning going on at the one time, which was sort of weird. But in a way, then it sort of developed how I did things later on, because I had two sort of different methods of learning, like I could kind of draw from for different things, if you know what I mean. So then I sort of like developed my own kind of weird style. But it is interesting how I always find it interesting how, like, you know, people learn how to do things and how people pick things up and stuff like that. It's something I'm always kind of interested in.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think like this, you know, if I knew the stuff that I know today on how to, you know, put out like a good practice plan and how to, you know, focus on stuff. If I knew that like 20 years ago, wow, what an incredible guitar player I could be. But you know, you can't really think like that. But you know, sometimes when you're like, oh fuck, I should have learned this like 2 years ago or something like that.
And sometimes as well, you're sort of constrained by time, because see, when I look back and I think about how I did my first kind of recordings and it was on an old cassette 4-track, you know, because that's kind of all we had at the time. And like, I always think, God, what would it have been like if I had like Ableton Live then? You know, it would have been like a totally different ball game, most likely.
Yeah. I actually bought like one of those Foss track or whatever they were called, like a big 4-channel, and you had those chrome bands. That was like the only studio equipment that I owned before I, you know, started recording on computers and stuff. But it was basically just instrumental guitar music and stuff like that, because it was always a hassle to try and record drums and stuff, because you know, you only had 4 channels and stuff like that.
Almost impossible.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you don't realise what that was like, you know, and it seems like such a long time ago now, but like I was kind of young when we had that. But at the time when I did have a 4-track, to be honest, I didn't use it for like making sort of albums or anything like that. All I really did was, like, I was in bands when I was younger, so when I was like writing songs, if I was maybe trying to work out a lead and a rhythm guitar part, you know, I would record the rhythm guitar part into the 4-track, and then I could like do the lead over it, and that would sort of, you know, that's why I used it for more that sort of thing, you know, like as opposed to actually making anything that I was going to put out. You know, we just shelled out for studio time, you know, for that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, back then, I had a friend in Finspång that we met up very, very often and composed, and we actually recorded a lot of songs on my 4-tracker. And I remember that we had those writing sessions, and maybe we came up with like 2 or 3 riffs each writing session, and we always ended like writing one riff that we were so proud of that we sat there and we looped it and played it for, you know, hours on end, and we thought that, oh, this is like the greatest thing ever. And you know, today I'm looking back at it and I'm like, yeah, it's not rock history, but you know, it's always fun to remember those times where, you know, when you were young and everything was new and exciting, and as soon as you did like a really cool riff, you were like super proud, and you know, just sat there and played it over and over again.
It's funny you say that. There's even like some old stuff I listen to of the bands I played in, and every now and again, I don't listen to that much, but sometimes I'll listen to it, and every now and again I'll hear a little bit and I'll be like, how did I do that? Like, I don't even remember.
Yeah, and stuff like that. Because I had a time where my main focus, you know, like most guitar player has like a period like this. My main focus was to try and play faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
And I had like my first death metal band that I released albums with is called Suicidal Seduction, and we recorded like our first professional demo. We recorded in Finspång, and when I hear that recording today, I'm like, I don't even know if I can play that fast today, because it's like insanely fast, because that was my main focus during that period of time. I think I was like 22 or something like that, and speed speed was king. Speed was everything. It had to be blistering fast guitar solos, otherwise it wasn't cool enough.
It's interesting. It's funny you say that because, and maybe this is the same for you. It kind of sounds like it's the same for you because when I think about it for me, when I was younger, I was more interested, like you said, in sort of playing fast in the more technical aspects and stuff like that. But as I get older, I find myself more interested, not only in stuff I'm making, but even in stuff I'm listening to. I find myself more interested in songwriting and composition, as opposed to just the technical aspects that I was way more interested in, when I was, say, in my 20s or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally enjoy, people playing, crazy stuff. But if there's like a cool melody, or a guy or a girl playing a really cool and nice melody, and play it in their own unique way, like I mentioned earlier, I think Marty Friedman is one of my favorite guitar player, and he is in like one bar in, you hear that it's him, because he has such a unique way of playing and accenting everything. So I mean, that's something that I try and focus on more these days. But of course, sometimes it's fun, and it's effectful to throw in, some fast runs or some cool arpeggios or something like that. But my main focus now is, to do it like melodic and beautiful, basically.
My theory about that, I don't know, I'm not speaking for anyone else, but for me, my theory about that is I think when I was younger, I was more interested generally in the minutiae of things, the little things. And then as I get older, I have more of a big picture view, and I'm more interested in the kind of bigger picture. And this is my theory for me. I think that translates to like what I listen to and how I do music and stuff like that as well. I think that affects everything.
Yeah, yeah.
I know it's a weird theory, but I think so. And something I was going to ask you as well. So, like, this is just some of my British ignorance, but obviously you're Zorn and the band is Zornheym. Is there something? What does that actually mean in terms of the name?
It's actually from German, and Zorn means anger, and Heim means home. So it's basically home of anger. And since the whole concept revolves around an asylum that's called Zornheym, with an I, because then we want to have the German way of spelling it, and that's how we can, uh, talk about it. And the band is with a Y, and the uh, asylum is with an I. And the debut album is called Where Hatred Dwells and Darkness Reigns, and that's also like a nickname for the asylum as well. And each song tells the story of one of the inmates that's locked up there. And so basically, the first album takes you through the corridors of Zornheym, and it's almost like you're an visitor that's getting like an introduction, that in this cell block you have this inmate locked up here, and in this cell block you have this inmate. So the whole album goes through different inmates, and the CD version of the album has their their personal data as well, like a doctor's note written, um, patient's journal, or whatever you would call it. And so there's a lot of like background done with this, and we actually worked together with the Finnish artist Anu Bring as well, and we did a graphic novel that we released a few months after the release of the album. And that graphic novel goes more into depth uh, of each inmate. So there's 6 chapters in the graphic novel, and they're called, like the songs are called, because each chapter goes more into depth of each inmate. So I tend to see Zornheym as a pretty, almost like an onion. It's so many layers. There's just a cool song if you're just into music, but if you're that kind of person that really digs concept albums, maybe cool art or stuff like that, there's so many more layers for you to discover if you're interested.
No, I was going to. That's why you're quite a good guest, because you're anticipating my needs. Because I was going to start asking you about the album, so
Okay.
it's always good. But no, that's something that really did interest me, because I noticed that you'd written like the kind of patient histories that sort of like each song on your website, and I read through them, and they were actually, that's what I found, they were quite detailed and in depth. Referencing real conditions and things like that. And it seems like you put like quite a bit of thought into like like you were saying, like King Diamond and stuff, and complex concept albums. It seems like you've really kind of achieved that with like all these in-depth kind of histories. You've put some thought into it.
Yeah. I mean, actually, we had a real doctor that was like aiding us when we were writing this stuff. So it's supposed to be pretty accurate, and the conditions and stuff, and then we've mixed fiction with true stories and urban legends, and spiced it up with our own twisted imagination, and yeah, the outcome became the album.
Yeah, and that is very cool. And while we're on this kind of subject, I suppose we should mention like the video for The Opposed, which has really got quite a high production value, actually.
Yeah, we're very happy with how the video turned out. We were working together with Martin Strandberg. He's been working with Sabaton and Shining and some other big names. And I mean, he's very dedicated, and we all put, we really invested our heart and soul in the video, and we we wanted to go, all in on it, because the video is basically we didn't want to do, the classical where you put on your gear and you're in this dark industry complex, and you have like 3 lights pointed toward you, and you have like a smoke machine and 200 cool angles where you're headbanging. It's like we more, I mean, there's nothing wrong to do that, but since we are so focused on our concept, we more wanted to do like a short movie of Edward, and that's the inmate that the Opposed song is about. So basically, we took the chapter from the graphic novel, and we used it as a storyboard. And then we had like several meetings with Martin where we discussed everything. And then we had like one day where we recorded in the old town in Stockholm here, and then we went up to and then we had like one day where we recorded the cello stuff, and where he actually meets, calls me to the house, to his house, where he shows his deformed head, in the backside of his head, his evil twin. That we recorded in one house here in Stockholm, and then we went up to a a prison museum in Gävle. I mean, it's actually a very cool museum. It's like an actual prison, and they actually have a very cool festival there during the summer in that city. So if you're going to Gävle to see that festival, you should totally go by this museum to check it out, because it's really cool. And they were kind enough to lend us. Actually, they let us be there and shoot the scenes that we needed for the video there. So it was really cool of them, and we got this really authentic look in our music video. And I think that brought some, extra credibility and coolness to the whole production.
Yeah, no, totally, and I thought that as well. Like, it really did. Like, sometimes you see some music videos and, like, particularly I've got like a friend in that who's like Katie, she's been on the show, who's like a film director and stuff. So she's taught me, I don't know anything personally, like I'm not a film director, but she's sort of showed me like what good production is like with her films and stuff like that. And I've learned a lot from her. And, I thought at first, it had a very high production value and stuff like that. And, I thought it was cool as well, the thing you were talking about the whole kind of two-face thing, because, sometimes the face kind of comes out when he's playing the cello, sometimes only just for a second and stuff like that, but you kind of notice it. And I kind of thought that was quite a good allegory, if you know what I mean, for the whole thing that's, like the mental illness kind of thing, the sort of two personalities, the kind of two sides of them. And then, if you haven't watched the video, I'm just going to spoil the end for you, so you can pause this and go and watch it now. But, the fact that he kind of like cuts it out and stuff at the end, like he takes a kind of knife to the other side and then sort of he's dead too. So it's, in a way, it's weird. I almost thought it was kind of like, then it was kind of like, was that part of him an integral part of him?
Yeah, I mean, the comic goes really into depth. That he basically what happens is that no one wants to help him, because it's so risky to remove the other head from the backside of his head, and the head is it's driving him crazy. The only thing that he can do to get the voice out is to play the cello, and that's why he's playing it like a maniac in the video. And I mean, that's why the whole album, the whole song is has this cello theme and everything. And what happens is that as he is locked up in Zornheym, his face slowly starts to change. So he feels like the face that he once cut out from the back of his head is growing back, but this time it's in front of his head, and he starts to hearing the voice of his evil twin again, telling him, and that's basically what the lyrics is about. It's like dialogue between Edward and his evil twin, and he's saying that he's going to come back, take control over him, and he's just going to be a vessel that he's going to be riding around.
And that's really interesting, and that's again what I kind of like about your stuff. You've obviously thought about it and like gone into a lot of depth, and I think that really adds something. See, when like because obviously, like, we can talk about other concept albums as well, like a really good concept album is one that has like a really kind of deep story behind it, because that way it just adds more to it. There's more depth to it, and everyone loves a good story anyway, regardless of what form it comes in. I think we've been telling each other stories since prehistoric times. It's something that's never going to go away, and I think that sometimes you can get good albums that are just full of like random songs. You can get great albums like that, but a lot of the time some of the most powerful albums overall are ones with like a really strong concept and a really deep and strong story.
Yeah, that's something that I totally second. That's the way I like it. What I try and avoid is to do it too much as a concept album, in the sense that I mean, of course, when this is a album about insanity and asylum, everything could, be dissonance and, just have weird drone parts and people are screaming and stuff
Yeah,
like
like,
that. But
ah!
at the same time, I choose to focus on that these kind of people, they usually have like a very majestic feeling about them. They have like high thoughts. They think they're, some people even think that they're gods, because of their mental state, and stuff like that. So I more picked that uh, that way to present the feeling of everything, instead of having just like a dissonant chord laying in the background and have everyone screaming and stuff like that.
Yeah, it just gets pointless after a while. And something I thought that was really good about the music as well is the fact that you went the symphonic route and you use classical instrumentation. It's not overpowering the way you do it. There is some bands that, they use that kind of stuff and it just overpowers the metal and it doesn't really work. But I like how the way you do it, it just adds something instead of being all about the kind of symphonic elements,
Yeah, I mean, that has been the plan since day one. We're still a metal band, and we're a band that's the main force in the band is the guitar riffs, and then we write guitar riffs that has some air space in them, so we can color that with symphonic elements and stuff like that to make it more interesting. Well, that's the way I think that it gets more interesting, instead of having a guitar like a lot of bands do. The guitar basically plays like a bass line, da 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 da, and then
Yeah.
the string orchestra is doing all the cool arpeggio stuff, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, sometimes that sounds really cool, and if you're into that, that's good for you. But I still wanted to have the guitar as the main force
Mm.
in the band.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. I think it really sort of comes out, like I said, sometimes it can be overpowering, but I think the way you do it, I think the ratio of kind of metal to symphony is just kind of right, and like, yeah, I think it really works. And well, that album came out last year, so what is coming up next for you?
We're actually finishing finishing up the pre-production of the second album right now. So we're booking the studio for next year to start and record the follow-up album. So right now we're pretty busy with getting the last bits and pieces all where they should be, basically, all over the place. I'm almost done with the music. There's just one last song that needs to be finished and finalized, and then we have some lyrics, a lot of lyrics left, actually, because that's the way we do it. I write the music first, but I have like the storyline in the back of my head, and I write the music in a way where I try and put a lot of dramatic stuff in there, so I know that here something like this can happen and stuff like that, and then we work on the vocal lines and put that on there, and then we start working with the lyrics, basically.
So is there anything you can tell us about what this album will be like?
I think that to say of it feels like we have take most of the stuff like one step further. There's some more extreme stuff. There's some more melodic stuff. There's some more, actually some really heavy stuff on this album. I think that the songs are better written. Not saying that the first album is poorly written, but basically that we have refined everything, and we're gonna try and introduce some more instruments as well, to try and get some more woodwind stuff in on this recording as well. And we're working a little bit more with clean vocals on some parts, because I think Bendler, the vocalist, he has a incredible cool clean vocal tone. And actually the second guitar player, Skook guy, he has a very good voice as well. So he's doing some pretty cool vocal stuff on this album as well. And the album basically starts where the first album left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. So it's a concept album as well.
Yeah, it actually the graphic novel kind of gives away in the end what the second album is going to be about.
Oh, then that's a cue for listeners to buy the graphic novel.
Yeah, and you can do it on our Bandcamp.
Yes, get yourself there. Because you actually run your own shop in that, don't you?
Yeah, actually, we just opened it, so it's pretty new, and I'm very happy that we got it. Bandcamp seems to be a cool place where you can find a lot of cool people that support a lot of cool music.
Mm. Yeah, actually, I really quite like Bandcamp. You know, like all the music for the show, I always get it, like usually like off Bandcamp and stuff like that. You know, and I always recommend it to people because I think it's actually become quite a good resource. It's become kind of like, you know, the musician streaming service, if you know what I mean. Like now they've got an app and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, and because we had one of those tick-tail shops earlier, but it never really took off. And then I tried this Bandcamp stuff, and it just worked perfect from day one, basically. So I'm very happy with it, and yeah, we're going to be using it a lot for in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of before we go, I just mentioned that because like it's kind of interesting because I remember, like, you know, when Napster came about the first time and like everyone was pirating music and all that kind of thing. And I kind of think now, you know, people will criticize a lot of streaming services and stuff like that. But I do think it's better now that more people will just pay a subscription for like Spotify or iTunes or buy your stuff off Bandcamp or something like that, because it really has killed a lot of what was this whole piracy thing. You know, like it used to be a much bigger culture, I think, music piracy than it is now, because a lot of people are just like, well, I could just pay like a tenner a month and I'll get Spotify, if you know what I mean. And it's better than just people just downloading it for, you know, illegally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of not. I mean it's a war that you can't win to try and you know, fight streaming services and stuff like that. So I think it's better to join the dark side instead of trying to fight it.
The thing is, you just have to work with what's there, don't you? I mean, that's where the people are listening and stuff, and that's how people listen to music. So, I mean, you have to work with what's around, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, Spotify and services like that, they've added, you know, tons of good stuff. Like you can promote your shows there, and if people like to listen to you on Spotify, they might tend to show up at the show and maybe get a t-shirt or, you know, whatever, just buy a ticket and go there. I mean, everything counts today. I think, you know, every way that you support a band counts.
And that's interesting, because that's like what I've said before about these kind of streaming services, because like, for example, if I hear like a band on Spotify that I like, I will buy their album, I'll buy a vinyl, I'll go and see them live, you'll have them on the show, I'll do something, to support them in some way. And I think people that listen to sort of extreme music are more likely to do that than people that, just listen to whatever like pop music to distract themselves. Because I think people that are into extreme music in general, from my experience, are more invested in it, and they're more likely to spend money on you than, someone who's just, people who are tangentially into music generally don't like extreme music. That tends to be for people who are, really into music, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm the same thing. I'm the same guy, I like to own the stuff that I really like, and it would be some sort of double morale if I would want people to buy my albums, but I wouldn't be buying albums from bands that I like, So
Yeah.
of course, I still buy albums. Yeah, I mean, the other day my girlfriend told me that don't you have this album? Yeah, but I don't have it in this
Yeah, it's
new
format.
released edition, so
Yeah.
I need to buy this and this, and then I'm gonna have 5 copies of it.
And I've got like, that's, people have said that to me before. I've got like vinyls that I've never actually played. I've just like put them in frames and hung them on the wall, and like, why
Yeah.
don't you play them? I'm like, oh, you don't play that. That's for display. That's a collector's item.
Yeah, I mean, so I am definitely a collector.
Yeah.
uh I really like when I like something, I like to own it, and just not own like a iTunes file or anything like that, because I'm a Swede, so of course I have Spotify. Spotify is extremely big in Sweden,
Yeah.
so I use that format. But for some reason, um, when I go to my record collection, I want to hear different stuff than I want to hear when I'm using Spotify, and it's I don't know what it is, but it's like a bigger gratification when you go to your uh, record collection, and you go through the system that you have arranged your albums in, and then you pick an album, and then you go and put it in your CD player or vinyl player and put it on, and then I usually let it play the whole album while I'm cooking, or cleaning, or doing whatever here at home. And I don't know, it's not the same thing as when I'm on Spotify, because then I listen usually to different stuff than I listen to at home, even though they have a lot of the albums that I have at home on Spotify. But I don't know what it is, it just feels different when I can pick it up.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. There is something different about it. And I do like the fact that, I can, say, take my dog out for a long walk in the park or whatever, and listen to music while I'm outside. But I'm kind of the same in that way as well, where, if I'm listening to a vinyl, I'm more likely to listen to it all the way through. If I'm outside, sometimes I'll listen to a full album, but sometimes I'll be tempted by like playlists and things like that. But when I put on a vinyl, I'll just let it run. I'll just listen to it. And I'm not surprised. I've mentioned this before. I'm not surprised that vinyl made a comeback, because it just really, I mean, we can talk about all the other, we have done on the show before, all the other kind of formats that have been out, even from cassettes to mini discs to everything, CDs, whatever. I mean, and nothing will beat vinyl, for the quality, the sound quality, the quality of the art, just everything about it. It's just the kind of format that maybe something will come out in the future. But for me, vinyl has never been beaten as a format.
No, I like the vinyl format as well. Right now, my son is 4 years old, so uh, when he's home, I don't listen to vinyl that much, because I don't want want to take the risk of him scratching my
Oh,
Christmas
yeah.
album. But
Yeah.
what, when he's asleep or something like that, I
Put the
can
headphones
listen
in.
to it and enjoy it. But I mean, this is the first full length album that I have released on a vinyl, because we actually, Non-Servian Records, our record label, they actually released a vinyl version in three different colors of
Oh, awesome.
our album, and I'm very happy with how that turned out. And for me, as a musician, it was a big thing to finally have a full album out on a big on a vinyl, like the big format, because I've released 7 inches and stuff like that in the past, but never, a full LP.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean, but that's really cool actually. Especially I love coloured vinyl and stuff. That is great. But we're I could probably talk to you all night, but we're starting to come towards the end of the show. Is there anything we should mention that we haven't talked about?
Yeah.
Go for it.
We're a pretty new band, so I guess it's a lot of stuff to talk about. But I mean, I think if anyone that's listening to this likes concept albums and stuff like that, they should really give us a chance and check us out, because I think we have something really cool to offer. And if you're just into cool symphonic metal, you should check us out as well. Other than that, we're gonna go on another tour in spring next year. We basically came home like a month ago from a tour that we did in Germany. We actually did one show in Austria as well, and one in Czech Republic. So we actually had a pretty busy year. We actually played in Scotland earlier this year.
I did
in Edinburgh.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a really cool show.
Oh, I missed that. I'm in Glasgow, but I never noticed. I don't think I was really aware of you at that time anyway, to be fair.
No, but I think we're coming back late next year to do War. It's a festival. I think it's called like War Horns Festival or something like that. Campfire. And
where does that?
When? Let's see
or
if
where?
I can. It's see if I a War Horn Festival, and it's in Yorkshire.
Oh, right. Okay, so down England.
23rd to 31st of August.
Oh, I'll probably be able to get down for that because it's quite a bit away, so I'd have the time. If I can get down for that, I'll come down. That would be pretty cool. It's not too hard to get down there. Maybe about a few hours in the car or something like that. It's not difficult.
Oh, cool. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be excellent. So yeah, I think we've done everything, haven't we? I've really enjoyed the conversation, man. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was nice to talk about music. It's always nice.
So my thanks again to Zorn for coming on the show. Fascinating conversation and really cool music, and I'm really interested in what he's going to come up with in the future. I'd love to hear it. So thank you all for listening. The website, BresnixCast.com. Follow me on Twitter, @VladimirBresnix. My album is out on all your favourite digital streaming platforms. And also there is a PayPal donation button on the website now. Thank you to everyone who has donated. And, if you've got a few extra quid and you like what I do, then help me to support the underground. I really do appreciate it. So like I said, that is it. We are done. So let's hear some more Zornheym, obviously. So from, again, the Where Hatred Dwells and Darkness Reigns album, this is Whom the Night Brings.
Shadows are crawling on the wall. Now